Buenas tardes. Vamos a
Good
empezar
afternoon.
con
We
la
will
próxima
resume
mesa
and
del
start with
Congreso.
the
Está
next
dedicado a los
roundtable of
modelos
this Congress,
internacionales en el que nos
talking
van a
about
presentar
international
tanto
models.
cómo es la situación de
And we will
los
be hearing
archivos
from the situation
en
of
otros países como
archives in
Bélgica,
other
también
countries such
unos
as
modelos
Belgium,
concretos de
other concrete
América
models in
y
America,
Francesco
and
Antonio nos va a
Francesco
presentar
Antonelli is going to introduce to us
el tema del acceso a los archivos
access
en
to
Italia.
archives in Italy.
Francesco es archivero y asesor del patrimonio
is an
industrial,
archivist and
fundador y directivo
counselor of
ejecutivo de
Industrial
Virgin
Archive,
Associated
founder of
Studio,
Virgin
donde se ha encargado de los negocios
Studios,
de los archivos de
dealing with
empresa, de
our
la gestión de
company
documentos, la
archives,
investigación
document
histórica y la
management,
herencia de la
historical
marca durante más
research,
de una
and
década.
branding for
Miembro
over a
fundador
decade.
de Trato
He is the
Punto, donde
founding
se encarga
members
del
of
turismo
Trato
industrial y de
Dot,
la creación de
working with
exposiciones y museos
industrial
itinerarios.
documents
Es
and
miembro del
museums.
Consejo de la Asociación
He's member
Italiana
of the
del
Italian
Patrimonio Arqueológico
Association
Industrial
for the
(AIPAI) y de la Asociación
Industrial
Internacional y
Heritage
Archivística Italiana
and
(NAI).
a
Y
member
además ahora
of
mismo
the
es director
National
ejecutivo del
Association of
Comité
Archivists
Internacional
and
para la
a
Conservación
member
y
of the
Defensa del
board
Patrimonio Industrial (TICI).
of TICI.
Alberto, puedes empezar
And
cuando
Alberto,
quieras.
you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me here today. I speak in English, but the slides of my presentation are in Spanish, so I think most of you can read what I'm telling to you. I bring you also the greetings of the National Board of the National Association of Archivists in Italy, and also the greetings of the new president of TICI, Marion Steiner, and the new board of the TICI. In TICI, with Miguel, most of all, we have a group of interested people, a group of professional or people involved in any way in studying, in developing description and inventory, cataloging, etc. in industrial heritage. So today I'm here also to promote this kind of group and to promote the possibility to work together. I heard this morning the necessity to do networking and to work together, and this is one occasion that I hope good occasion, I don't know, but we'll see. If you want to join in this group, it's free for now. It is not required to be associated in TICI for now and maybe forever. So if you want to join, look for us in the social media, look for us in the website of TICI, and maybe we'll see what's happened. I agree with many of the observation and the question that colleagues in this morning say to the audience, but I think the most problem of the archives and the industrial archives in specific today is not politics, is not entrepreneur, is not society, but is the archivist who stay in the archive. Because many times the archivists don't know who do. And many times the archivist don't know how to explain who is he and how is and what is his work. So I think first to accuse, I use this word, others, I think it's a good way to understand who you are. Think about us, think about if we are able to do at our best our work, because in 25 years I'm living inside archives, I see things like the actor says in that famous films, and these things, these horrible things, was made all from archivists, not for the owner, not for the entrepreneur, not volunteers, but the most dangerous things are made from the archivist. So archives and as landscape, what to do when it becomes inaccessible. This is the case of study of today, but you understand where we are and how we do during the presentation. Mine today will be just a few general questions, informed in this case not so much by theory or disciplines, but by practice. This presentation is a small version because this night I had some troubles with laptop and internet connection, and I was during the save of the files from PDF to PPT, and files broke. So this morning at 5 o'clock I redo my presentation in a synthetic way. This is anything revolutionary, as I told you today, and it's not intended to be revolutionary. It's simply a bottom-up and collaborative view of archival intervention. Sorry, but you can also read the text that
y el orador ahora les propongo que lean el texto de lo que está diciendo él ahora en inglés, que está en español el texto. Con lo cual no se trata de nada revolucionario ni pretende serlo.
Nor also will there be any comments related to two extremely important aspects of archival intervention, especially when the archive, for various reasons, become inaccessible. There's these two aspects, one related to emergency management, which is addressed within the framework of Blue Shield International and national branches of Blue Shields. On the other, to accessibility related at European level to everything is about UCIHC guidelines and the standards EN 301549, which address both web and physical spaces accessibility.
De esto voy a hablar.
In that archives. The example of Dolomiti Contemporanee. Dolomiti Contemporanee is a project to manage artists in abandoned places. Leads us to, I go to the right.
Y ahora tengo que conseguir
to the right slide. I want to tell you with a practical example is what can happen when an archive is brought to the light and made available to the community. More precisely, when the archive becomes part of the community and the landscape that created it again. When the archive once again becomes a landscape in the true sense of the word, of this word. And the landscape that was, the landscape that is, and the landscape that can be. When this happens, the Italian law that includes archives in the cultural heritage and landscape code also makes the full sense. We have a law from 2005, the Code of Cultural Heritage and Landscape, that have inside also all the rules about the archives.
Patrimonio cultural y también las normas que rigen el
the example is taken from the first summer school in 2016, conducted by a group of archivists at the Eni village in Corte di Cadore, in the north of Italy, near Cortina d'Ampezzo, site of the famous 56 Winter Olympics, and also famous for the next one in 26, famous, not in the right way. The village, the pinnacle of Italian social architecture, designed by Edoardo Gerner on direct commission and idea of Enrico Mattei, the Eni president, who was probably killed in 62, is a world waiting to be discovered for the social life todavía, y es importante para la vida social de la segunda mitad del siglo XX en Italia, y como muchas otras instituciones, ha producido en sí mismo un archivo.
Este archivo es un archivo que escapó milagrosamente a años de abandono y que, sin embargo, literalmente se encontraba como enterrado en las profundidades de un edificio presidencial. La reunión entre la gestión artística del espacio, como les dije, eso es una organización dedicada a mostrar lugares abandonados mediante acciones artísticas, mezclado con la actividad de archivistas, dio como resultado un proyecto para descubrir el archivo y restituirlo a la comunidad y un paisaje, lo cual refleja de alguna manera todo lo que nos cuentan los documentos.
This is maybe a virtuous example in many respects of the landscape's political and scientific reappropriation of its archives, and the landscape reappropriation of the archive,
en sí mismo
a happy,
y del archivo
I hope, coincidence between archival and management action.
Una feliz
This is
coincidencia
also
entre
a
la acción
resilient
archivista y
action
gestión.
that has
Se trata
allowed for
también de una
now
acción
the
resiliente
archive to
que
be
nos ha permitido
preserved in
hasta
its
ahora
original
o por ahora
location, but in its
preservar el
past
archivo en
and
su
its
ubicación
present
original.
use. The archives
Tanto en
uprooting
su
and relocating in
utilización en su
another
uso pasado
location, for
y
example, to Rome in the
presente.
Ani
Se ha
archives,
evitado
it's
que
a
el
very worthy
archivo
location, by the way, has been for now
traslade
avoided.
a otro lugar cerca de Roma, así que lo mantenemos como un monumento.
The example of
El
Dolomiti
ejemplo de
Contemporanea
Dolomiti
leads us
contemporánea
also to
nos
reflect
lleva
on another
también a
emblematic case,
reflexionar
the
sobre otro
Vajont
caso
tragedy.
emblemático, la
The
tragedia de
disaster of
Vajont.
October
El
1963,
desastre del
when a
9 de
landslide
octubre de
of an entire mountain
2063,
into the
cuando
recently
un
constructed
corrimiento de
hydroelectric
tierras
reservoir
de una montaña
led to
entera
deaths
sobre
of
ese embalse hidroeléctrico que acababa de ser
1,970 people.
construido, provocó la muerte de
The artistic
1.917
project
personas.
takes place
El proyecto
within one of the few
artístico se
buildings
desarrolla
that
en uno de los
survived the
pocos
tragedy.
edificios que
The
sobrevivió
event, which saw a
sobrevivió a la
lengthy
tragedia.
legal process
Este
to determine
suceso
the
dio lugar a un
responsibility,
largo
blame,
proceso
and
legal para
compensation,
determinar
also
quiénes eran las
produced an archive.
responsabilidades, culpas e
These archives, after
indemnizaciones,
many
lo cual
years
dio
from
lugar a un
Rome,
archivo.
from
En este archivo,
National
después de
Tribunal of
muchos
Rome,
años de
was
trabajo,
returned to the
fue
local
devuelto
community
a
at
la
the
comunidad
Belluno,
local, en el archivo estatal de
city
Belluno,
of the province, Belluno State
una de las
Archives,
ciudades
and has
del
been
proyecto,
recognized
y ha
by
sido
UNESCO
reconocido
in
por
its
la
Memory
UNESCO
of the
en
World
su
program,
programa
the
de
same
memoria
from
para
the
el
archives
mundo.
of the World Heritage.
Y forma parte del patrimonio mundial de
These two
archivos.
represent
Esto
a
también
return
representa
of the
un
landscape of its
retorno al
origin,
paisaje
an
de
archive that
sus orígenes,
serves
un
as both a
archivo
testimony
que,
and a tool for
que sirve
assessing
de
the landscape
testimonio y de
itself.
herramienta para acceder al paisaje en sí mismo.
In conclusion, because
Para
if it's
concluir,
possible, I want to listen
porque
some
si fuese posible, me gustaría escuchar preguntas de ustedes. Como lo exige la legislación italiana, queda claro que el archivo forma parte del paisaje y constituye no solo un fundamento cognitivo, sino también el fundamento sustancial del paisaje. Es necesario trabajar en todos los sentidos, incluso con acciones radicales a veces, y con acciones que a veces no son muy ortodoxas, para que la comunidad y el paisaje recuperen sus archivos y que se pongan a disposición de todos. La aptitud para relaciones entre actores políticos, científicos y profesionales es crucial. Si consideramos la gestión de archivos como algo exclusivo para unos pocos, exclusivo del ámbito académico, por ejemplo, habremos fracasado desde el principio. El trabajo con las fuentes, por esta razón y por todo lo que se ha dicho esta mañana, la labor política de excelencia. Es todo lo que quería compartir con vosotros. Pero si habéis oído algo que os parezca extraño o algo que os parezca interesante, pues os pido que me lo digáis, porque creo que al menos tenemos 5 minutos para hablar del tema. De momento es lo que quería compartir con vosotros. Muchas gracias.
¿Hay alguna cuestión que alguien quiera plantear?
Is there any question that anyone would like to ask?
No.
No questions?
Pues pasamos a la
Let's move to the
ponente.
following presenter, Caroline.
Caroline Six es licenciada en Historia Contemporánea
has a
por la
degree in
Universidad Libre de
contemporary
Bruselas.
history by the
Participó en la
University of
redacción de
Brussels.
una guía sobre
She
los archivos
participated in a
corporativos
guide
conservados en
on
Bruselas,
corporate
un
archives
proyecto de
preserved
2
in
años junto
Brussels,
a otro
a
colega.
2-year project together with another
Inventarió las
colleague.
colecciones de
She
archivos
made a
corporativos y
list of
asociados.
corporate and associated archives.
Ella, bueno, todo esto lo
All
realizó
this was
en el
done
Archivo Estatal
in
de
the state
Bruselas, en los Archivos
archives
Nacionales de
of Brussels
Bruselas,
and
en
the
los que
National
trabajó desde
Archives of Brussels, where she worked
1998.
since
En ellos realizó
1998.
esto y también el plan de
And she did this,
clasificación,
and the classification plan,
ordenación e
the
historia de la
order
administración del
and
transporte
history of the
aéreo.
administration of air transport. So, Caroline, you have the floor.
Good afternoon.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon.
Okay, thank you to the
Muchísimas
organizers for
gracias
the
a los y
invitation.
las organizadoras por la
I'm
invitación.
talking today about
Hoy voy a hablarles
archives in Belgium
de
and
los
to
archivos en
introduce
Bélgica y les voy a
the
presentar
landscape of
el paisaje,
the
el
business
panorama
archives in
de
Belgium.
archivos corporativos en Bélgica. Y para ello voy a empezar con un breve resumen de la historia económica
of Belgium.
de
From
Bélgica.
1880,
En 1880, el sector bancario ha perdido su carácter como bancos de inversiones o de compañías empresariales y han combinado sus actividades con otros tipos de actividad bancaria. En aquel momento ha recibido de una gran cantidad de bancos y de banqueros que viven en Bélgica y que tienen base en Bélgica para trabajar juntos. Desde los años 90, el sector bancario belga ha tenido muchísima preocupación de tener una protección de toda la documentación, lo cual demuestra un interés en la preocupación que tiene sobre el transporte, sobre todo ferroviario y de tranvía, en Francia y en el extranjero. Al mismo tiempo, empresas o holdings fueron creados y se empezaron a implicar en la construcción de tranvías y de un sistema ferroviario para ampliar la economía belga, lo cual va acompañado de un desarrollo increíble de muchísimas otras actividades económicas, del finanzas, el capitalismo y un trabajo estrecho con el sector bancario e industrial. Esta disociación tan grande entre los dueños de los bancos y de su gestión. Durante este periodo, los bancos empezó a trabajar con muchos otros actores del sector bancario belga, sobre todo después de la guerra. Desde hace muchos años, es un sector tradicional de la industria, el sector bancario, y por eso ha invertido en nuevas industrias, electricidad, sobre todo para el sistema de tranvías, o de tranvías, que en aquel momento eran conducidos inicialmente por caballos. Con el desarrollo de la industria eléctrica, que fue fundada a principios del siglo, y con la creación de la Sociedad Belga de Gestión Eléctrica, el sector bancario empezó a invertir y empezó a buscar otros mercados, además de la Société Générale, y empezó a trabajar con un grupo bancario de ultramar. En este contexto, Bélgica, a finales del siglo XIX, era la segunda economía en el continente, en el sistema ferroviario, y el tercer inversor en España, después del Reino Unido y después de Francia.
The First World War was a
La
real shock
Primera
for the
Guerra
Belgian
Mundial
economy.
fue
Not
un
only because
impulso.
the industrial base was devastated by destruction and pillage. Thank you. But also by the shrinking of the deposit reserve in the banks. Therefore, interwar marks a withdrawal on the domestic market and the Congo as Belgian colony. The electricity sector was thoroughly restructured with the foundation of (1837), 1937, sorry, they express 1937, sorry, they express their concern about the danger that Belgium's political position, through which the so-called nationalist Spain was inured, implied for its commercial relations in Spain. The committee insists about the foreign department on the importance and the location of Belgian assets with the governments in Spain. And the concern in a company where Sofina, Sidro, a subsidiary of Sofina, Electrobel, Bell, and Solvay, etc. As on the volume of the trade, import essential to Belgian industry, such as perit, a basic material for Solvay. It's a chemical industry famous since 19th century for the fabrication of soda. They invented and deposit a license to produce soda with electricity. And they have an important local headquarters in Torre de la Vega until now. No. So the employers' organization, of the committee, the Central Industrial Committee. This is the employers' organization in Belgium. Demanded the recognition. The recognitions of workers supported by an unofficial and secret, on-the-spot investigation mission into Belgian economic interest. In the summer, his report was doubly positive. The size of the property in question and the order reigning in the nationalist territory. In March 1939, recognition was achieved by Belgium. And during the war, Solvay went to Germany in November 1940 to plead his cause and defend his interests, economic interest in Spain. After the Second World War and the loss of its colony in 1960, Belgian economy, especially in Wallonia, knew deep recession. In the 80s, electrical and tractional merged to form tractable. At that time, almost all of Tractable's assets were located in Belgium. But from the end of the decade, movements of redeployment abroad began. Tractable began to think about how to become one of the private industrial leaders in its sector in the European context. The group would thus value the experience acquired in Belgium, which makes in the strictly private numbers one in Europe. In 1990, a company was created to consolidate the group's holding abroad as an independent power producer, Electricity and Gas International. The fact that traction and electricity and Electrowell had been achieved abroad before the war reinforced the conviction that Tractable was able of playing a role on the international stage. Transnational alliances were negotiated with other private groups active in the energy sector. With the Spanish company Iberdrola, with a view to developing joint projects. Outside Europe, Tractable began to systematically monitor the evolution of the energy sector in a few countries located in three geographical areas: North America, and South America, and Southern Asia. In 1992, it entered the gas industry market in Argentina with its Spanish partner Iberdrola, and thus participating in the privatization of the sector. Now we'll present you the business archive landscape in Belgium. As you see here, the National Archives and State Archives in the provinces, in short, the State Archives, is composed of the National Archives in Brussels, and the 19 state archives repositories all over the country. and all in all, they preserve and manage more than 350 kilometers of unique archive documents. And actually, there is a repository in each province of Belgium, and several repositories in Brussels. 2 are for the headquarters, and the other you see, but they are nothing to do with business archives. Yeah. The legal text that regulate the archives regime, Law on Archives of the 24 June 1955, amended by the law of 6 May 2009, deal only very eventually with the question of the fate of private archives, particularly those produced by companies. At most, from the point of view of the state archives, this is no formal obligation to organize the conservation of these documents. As for the owners, the exercise of the personal right of property remains absolute, including the right to give, sell, sort, export, or destroy. They are private, they do anything they want with. Okay, there is, of course, the economic law on the documents, but after the time of using as the time the document doesn't serve to anything for the company, they can do what they want with them. And then throughout the 19th century, business archives were not considered in legislative text and were therefore rare in public archives repositories, and generally of judicial origin, confiscation or bankruptcy. Actually, it was really the law on archives in 1955, which changed the perspective and raised the awareness concern for the business archives in Belgium. National archivist Etienne Sab addressed a standard letter to the leader of all the large industrial groups in the country to inform that about the new archiving opportunities now available. And in the same year, the Inter-University Center of Contemporary History, based in Ghent, published 2 reports about business archives, one about the state of economic archives kept at public archives repository, and another about the archives of industrial enterprise kept by their respective producer. Although skeptical about the actual benefits of scientific research, several businesses did not hesitate to hand over the archives. The most remarkable of these donations was certainly the transfer of the historical archives of the Société Générale de Belgique. The venerable company, nicknamed the Old Lady, pursue its donation politics until nowadays. At National Archives, National Archive Belgium 2, Joseph Cuvelli repository, we are keeping 6 deposits of the Société Générale de Belgique. And it counts several hundreds linear meters of documents. At the time, the Société Générale de Belgique controlled more than 50 of the economic of the country through its subsidiaries and holdings. Electrical holdings, for example, they all merge at the end of the 80s in the hands of the Société Générale. Tractable is a merging of traction and electricity, the electrical holding of Société Générale with the electricity holding of Banque de Bruxelles, Electrobel. And by that, they concentrate, for example, all the economy around producing energy in Belgium. There is 3 repository actually where there is big collections of business archives. It's Antwerp. It's no. Yeah. It's Antwerp, Liège, and Brussels. There is also coal mining companies in Mons. In Liège, it's coal and steel. And Antwerp, it's very various. It's more than 350 meters, linear meters of archives, counting company of the port and the shipping buildings, banks, it was a very rich place too, as Brussels, and they inherited from the archives or of another centrum of documentation, which was linked to the University of Antwerp. And in Brussels, National Archives too, the Joseph Cuvier Repository, which is an extension of the National Archives of Belgium. It's keeps archives holding of business under forced administration from the period of the First World War for the jurisdiction of Brussels, and archives from the major holdings and bank of the country that also carried out their activities or open branch offices abroad or in the Congo. And this represents 10 kilometers of the linear documents. All in all, in the repository are kept 55 linear meters of documents. And among them, I spotted around 20 linear meters with activities in Spain. For example, as I already stated this, there was it's especially in electoral archives that we found the major of the documents. Because it cover gas, electricity, nuclear energy, transport, and in engineering sectors. For example, there is 4 meters concerns the tramway and electricity of Bilbao, the Bilbao. Yeah, this is other. There you see other company for which we are keeping among good amount of documents. Meeting of the board, meeting of the assemblies, annual reports. All the documents produced by an holding in the exercise of his activities. Yeah, because in Belgium we don't have it's scarce that we keep the archives from the local headquarters. When it's speaking about holdings, we are keeping the archives of the holdings, not from the company they created abroad. There is exception to this. For example, 3 companies which exercise their activities in China. For those 3, we are keeping all the archives produced, both in or what it left of it, both in Belgium and in China, because yeah. In Belgium, there is no archives, or very few archives of the Asturian des Mines, because the headquarters was in Paris. It was Belgian. There were a lot of Belgian capital in this company, but there is no documents in public repository. I think that there is some interesting family archives about the company, but the essential of the preserved document of this society, this company, are in Spain, in the Torrelavega. And why I insist on this? It's because I don't know. Okay, I'm back on it. But in Liège, it's keeping since 2018 the 7 linear meters of archives of the Société des Mines et Fonderies de Zinc de la Vieille Montagne, and this is the biggest concurrence to Asturian. The 2 of them were on concurrence, and at the end since in the second part of the 20th century, Vieille Montagne was absorbed by Union Minière and the Asturienne des Mines too. Okay. And what I have observed, it's that, so as I said, the archive's patrimony is really divided between Spain and Belgium and they are really complementary together. And sometimes there is only source left in Spain about some society founded in Belgium or in France, because the Belgians associated themselves to French or British, to form companies and lessen the concurrence on the markets. Okay, thank you for listening. And voilà.
Muchas gracias, Caroline.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Now we're going to continue with more presentations on examples from Argentina and Mexico based on industrial archives.
Ya. No. Ya lo sé. ¿Y cómo lo...? Es que no hay otra manera de hacerlo. ¿Podéis cortar un momento la transmisión y vosotros la pantalla, sí? Hola, Adriana. Vale. No, no me escuchas, ¿no? ¿Y dónde lo...? ¿Ah? ¿Esto? Sí, sí, es que no es posible detectar el micrófono, me dice. Ah, no. Espera. Tengo que enchufar este... Creo que me dijeron que tenía para la videoconferencia, que iba con este otro... Que había que cambiar el...
Adriana Ortega is an architect by the School of Architecture and Urban Planning of the University of Buenos Aires and Masters in Tourism Architecture by Foundation Ortega y Gasset. She's the creator of a Lievik brand, the industrial and cultural archive of Lievik town in Entre Rios in Argentina. And the scope of their job is historical research, rescue, and digitalization and new cultural contents for the community. Now, Adriana, you have the floor.
Disculpa, Adriana, que están intentando arreglar esto, a ver si se puede arreglar.
O sea, no estamos del todo arreglados.
No, todavía no estamos arreglados. Sí.
An architect with a degree by the University of Buenos Aires and a master's degree of tourism and management. And she created Liebig Trend in the Liebig brand in Liebig town in the province of Entre Rios in Argentina. She works with rescue, digitalization of heritage, and the creation of new cultural content to be articulated with the community and within the community.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, good evening. I'm logging in from Buenos Aires. It's a pleasure for me to talk to you about corporate archives and work archives in Argentina. It is very interesting for me to hear from you as well. I'm going to share with you an approach to the Argentinian scenario. What is the situation of our archives? The lack of legislation is the only norm. Destruction and disappearance of archives is very likely to happen. Lack of interest, lack of information by companies, and in general, for those who are interested in their preservation and custody, no resources are available. Who preserves in general these archives? In minority cases, companies, families, researchers. In most of the cases, it is public or private institutions and local institutions aimed at preserving their history. Let me talk to you about the origin of the archive I'm working at, and then I'm going to talk about the institutions that custody company archives, which are a real basis for the entire set of archives in Argentina. Liebig brand archive is based in Belgium, France, and English and German background, and we work with to create meat extraction in Argentina, Brazil, and Paraguay. So the company collapsed and few archives were remaining. So the work is to create what we call a Liebig community formed by descendants from the original workers that are transversed by the company's brand. Liebig brand is in progress. So disseminated information. Don't know exactly the origin of many of the items in the factory. We don't know exactly where the documentation of the headquarters in Buenos Aires are. The factory was closed in 1983. We have some communication with Fray Bentos City in Uruguay, and we know that archive museums and libraries in Europe preserves some pieces of local items in each country. The repository gathers items and documents after 25 years of research on Liebig. Findings on the street, on the factories that were abandoned, donation of papers that were kept by neighbors, and the rescue of the workers' archive. This is the beginning of our collection, and we classified according to their origin. The factory, workers, or families. So publicity, products, files, machine, documents, papers, labels, and also lab items, and a library with 300 books related to the industry of meat and the industrial heritage of the town and of other place where Liebig company was located. With the corporate archives, we collected all this information, among which the workers' registry that was rescued after the dismantle process in 2009, including many years of work at a village. So this collection contains 8,422 files of men and women with two content areas. A personal heading with personal data of the family, and then a development with data related to the space of work. So these data that were invisible so far are shared in the blog brand Liebi, waiting for it to be discovered. Genealogists, was studying families in the region, and he was able to find data in the files. Thanks to the testimony given by neighbors, we found who the granddaughter of the family was. So Liebi clan has many stories to be told, and each piece is a link in a shared history, a chain to rebuild the relationship between people and the factory spaces. Safeguarding all this allowed us to put a name on absent workers, and this helped us to find out about forgotten or unknown spaces, traits, and people. But we need more information to interpret data. The challenge ahead is to connect with inexistent users so far. We want to create a digital platform for participation. We made visible thousands of names of men and women, but we want to know their history and together create a puzzle of a collective story that linked South America to Europe. As a global corporate archive, it's a puzzle with a lot of pieces. In Fragmentos, the Museum of Industrial Revolution has an archive with machine manuals and also workers' data. At the same time, they custom repositories of other meat processing factories or textile companies. In the United Kingdom, the Unilever archive inherited the documents and the National Archive has publicity, and the Lloyd's archive has a registry of the ships of the company. The Thyssen Museum in Germany is very pertinent or relevant when talking about the history of this German chemistry. And the Museum of Marseille have an important collection of combs. The Fornin Library in Paris has posters. If we're talking about companies in Argentina, they need to include the manufacturing tasks and the crafts of all this artisanal activities. The Remate collection reflects the work with pictures, with the beginning only a collection showing a city and a country in progress and the life of workers. So the Remate collection, Remate could be considered as the main photographic reporter, including ideas for travelers. And in 1944, he took pictures of landscapes, pictures that were reproduced by other people. We have in our cashier's register book, in Fragmentos, as you can see on the picture, we can see the fee that was paid to him and where he was hosted, this photographer. His photos, albums, and cards are spread in private collections and public museums. Another important pictures archive is Whitcomb. Whitcomb was a trader and annotator of pictures, and he created Whitcomb Galleries. Foundation Espiga has a collection of catalogs, documents, and pictures that reflect the activity of this gallery or department stores, and the National Archive has a series of albums, and they created a catalog with facades, internal rooms, and the working processes of many companies, as for example, alpargatas or beer industry, dairy industry, wine industry. So they showed us the landscape in at the turn of the century, 19th century, and the beginning of the 20th century. Another important topic I would like to highlight is the industrial heritage and its reconversion, meaning giving these great spaces another life and articulate what is new, what is old in this new paradigm of circular economy. Let me give you two examples of these big public buildings that have archives. First, ISA Archive, which is a water management company dating back to 1894. It's an entire block a building of one block with 12 tanks, meaning the huge sewers that were used to distribute water in the city of Buenos Aires. These ceramic pieces came from England and the metal structures came from Belgium. The building is a National Historic Heritage Building. It was in operation until 1978. In 2010, all the exterior walls were restored, and the building has been reused for public administration or public offices of the company that is still in operation, and the Water Museum with exhibitions that are permanent and temporary, the library and the archive created by architect Tartarini. Archive has 400 blueprints of the palace, 60,000 network blueprints and many domicile blueprints. So it's interesting because each lot of the city is kept. Millions of blueprints that are conserved in this huge iron tanks. So the obsolete water reservoir became a reservoir for historical memory. The archive became a tool for research in urban development and for restoration, moving the archive that was in an enclosed space for something open to the city, to something open to the city. Another example I'm going to show you now is Arisu Winery, located in the city of Godoy Cruz in the province of Mendoza, the cradle of wine industry, historically and currently. This archive was found in the underground of the winery when it was being rebuilt, and then it was transferred to the administration palace where you can visit. It's a complete registry between 1891 and 1921. So the accounting books, purchases, personnel, files, reviews, blueprints, and the historical board, headed by architect Lidiana Gerini and a team, work for the classification, preservation, and organization of this document collection that is protected by the Godoy Cruz. The Arisu Winery, when they ceased private activities, was very much deteriorated. In 1998, it was considered National Historical Monument, and only in 2018 it was considered of public use by the municipality, which kicked off the project to reuse this as the Arisu cultural space. Three of the 6 facilities have the wine museum to tell the story of wine in Mendoza, and then there is a Congress hall and an audiovisual hall. This proposition is complemented with the development of a cultural district by Escorihuela Winery, Tomba and Barraquero wineries that are still in operation, as well as municipal and residential buildings that were recycled with commercial and food uses. Some public and private institutions have become reservoirs for corporate archives. Due to their origins, the academic interest, or the interest of the community, as it is the case of San Andrés University, the library is a resource center for research, and they work with Anglo-Argentine companies
Por tanto, conserva el
Gisela
acervo de
University
la empresa familiar
works to preserve
así como
Siam
archivos de firmas
Family
desactivadas.
Archive as well as
El Instituto
archives of
Ravignani
companies that no longer
custodia su
exist.
propia producción y recibe
Instituto
documentos
Ravignani,
de
Instituto
relevancia
Ravignani,
para la investigación histórica, como
works
el
with
caso de
historical
Yuval,
documents, as it is the
encuentra
case of
6 empresas
Yuval,
textiles. El
working
Archivo
with 6
Histórico de
textile
Córdoba,
companies.
uno de los
The Córdoba
importantes de nuestro país, recuerda
Artistic
documentos
History
públicos de la provincia. Estos fondos
Archive
que están resguardando tienen que ver con la
historical
provisión
documents
de
of the
energía
province,
eléctrica y el tranvía
electrical supply,
eléctrico que era una
and
concesión
electric tram,
municipal a
which
una
was
empresa
a
privada.
municipal concession to a private
Me
company.
interesa contarles sobre
I'm
estos
interested
centros de
in
documentación,
telling you about this
uno
documentation
público y
center.
otro privado,
One is public, the other one
porque,
is
por
private.
ejemplo, el
And I'm
CEDIAP se
interested
origina en
because
el archivo del
CEDIAP
Ministerio de Obras Públicas de Argentina
originates in the
y
Ministry of Public
conserva
Works of
planos y
Argentina,
fotografías de la arquitectura
preserving
pública.
blueprints and
Ellos
photos of
tienen un
public
portal de
architecture in Argentina. They
arquitectura
have an
con base de datos
architecture
online
portal
y
with
proporciona
an online
servicios de
database, and
digitalización.
they provide
Reúnen unos
digitalization services.
350.000
They
planos
have
y otras datas, fotografías
350,000
de empresas
plans,
como
blueprints, and other
correos,
companies such
líneas
as
marítimas,
mail
puertos, silos, transporte.
post,
Otro
silos,
centro
transportation, and other marine
es
companies.
el
The
CEDODAL,
other center is called CDODAL,
que fue creado por Ramón
which was
Gutiérrez y Graciela
created by
Viñuales
Ramon
a partir de
Gutierrez
sus
and Graciela
investigaciones sobre
Piñuales
patrimonio y
on the
arquitectura
basis of their
argentina.
research on
Tienen
Argentine
un acuerdo
research
con el
and
OEI, ellos
architecture.
conservan la
They have an
biblioteca,
agreement to preserve the library,
otro caso
the
son
review
las
library,
iniciativas
and the audio
sociales
library.
que
And
les
another
importan
case
mucho
is
por
social
salir del
initiatives,
enfoque
and they
académico
are
de la
really important
investigación
because they
histórica
are not
y
only
procurar
focused on
desde el
academic
archivo un
historical
acercamiento innovador.
approach, they
Como es
try
el
to
caso
have an
de San
innovative
Roque.
approach, as it
En
is the
plena
case
privatización,
of Ferro
objetos
White.
y herramientas fueron
During
salvados del
the
desmantelamiento
privatization,
por
many
familias de
items and
trabajadores
documents have been
ferroportuarias
saved
y de
from
las usinas.
dismantling thanks
Estos
to the people
actuaron
working
como
there.
archivistas
They
espontáneos,
became
decidieron qué cosas
spontaneous
tenían valor
archivists.
y las
They
guardaron en
decided
sus
what
casas.
things are
Por este
valuable and
motivo
they
no
kept
es
them
un conjunto
in their
ordenado.
houses.
El
So it's
archivo
not
no
an
reconstruye
ordered
una
ensemble.
única
This
historia, sino
archive
muchas
does
y a la
not
vez
rebuild
incompletas.
one
Ana
single history,
Miravalles,
but
al
many
frente del archivo, se
and not complete.
pregunta
Ana
¿cómo se
Miravalles, who's the
trabaja
head
con
of the
los
archive,
escombros? El
wonders
equipo de
how can you
profesionales y de los
work with
vecinos
debris?
tienen claro que están armando un
Neighbors and the
rompecabezas de
team
piezas
know
sueltas,
that they are
donde
working
el
with a
archivo oral
puzzle
fue
of
una
pieces,
gran
and the
herramienta para
oral
crear
archive is a
vínculos.
good
En
tool to create
2019, además
bonds.
de
In
consolidar el espacio
2019, apart
físico,
from consolidating
lanzaron
this
una guía
physical space,
online
they
para la
launched
consulta de
an
los
online
fondos,
guide for
reconfigurando
consultation of
así
the
cada
collections,
pieza que tenían
reconfiguring
entre
each
las
piece
historias de
they
muelles y
had
rieles.
because they
El
had many
director Nicolás
stories of
Tectone
ports and
aclara,
rails.
este no es un museo de los
Oscar Tectone
ferrocarriles,
says
es el
this is
museo
not
de los
a
que se quedaron
railway
en la vía.
museum, but this
El
is a
sentido está en el hacer
museum
afectivo
of those
que
who
puso
were
las
left
cosas a
behind
salvo.
on the
Es un museo
rails.
taller que
So
produce
it's a
herramientas
workshop
con
museum
objetos
producing
y
tools with
documentos del
objects
pasado
and
para
documents from the
ampliar la
past
comprensión del
to
presente y la
enlarge
perspectiva del futuro.
understanding the present
El
and
museo
having a
trabaja
look into the future.
permanentemente con los
The
vecinos y
museum
con las
works on a
comunidades
constant basis
del
with the
del
neighbors
territorio de Bahía Blanca.
and with the
Aquí
community of
pueden ver
Bahía
algunas
Blanca.
de las
Here you
actividades
can see some of the activities
de la cual vecinos forman parte y le dan
of
forma a las
which
historias
in
a
which
partir
the
de los
neighbors
objetos.
participate,
A modo de
and
ejemplo,
they use
este año
this
ocurrió una grave
and they
inundación
create
por lluvias
stories
en la ciudad y desde
based
el
on
archivo se
items.
recurrió al
So
pasado
this year,
para preguntarse cómo
after
evitar su
heavy
repetición.
rains
Y
and
con este
floods,
ejercicio que se
they
llevó a
said,
cabo,
how can we
buscar
what
alternativas
can we do
futuras.
to avoid what
Hoy
happened in
las
the
empresas
past and try to find
transnacionales son una
new
excepción en
activities.
Argentina,
Transnational
pero
companies
tanto Beijing
are an
como
exception in
Bukibor
Argentina
son
today, but Sint
empresas
and
en actividad
Bukibor
que tienen a
are
resguardo
companies
su
in
archivo
operation
histórico como
that kept
recurso
their
de
historical
educación.
archive as an
El de
education
Beijing,
resource.
más que un archivo, es un
The
centro de
Tichin archive
documentación que
is a
establece un
documentation
puente entre
center
Argentina
that
e Italia.
bridges
Es una
Italy,
colección abierta
and
de
it's
una
a bridge
empresa
between Argentina
industrial
and
en
Italy.
ciudades
It's an
industriales
open
y
archive
crece de la mano de sus
that
comunidades.
grows
Los
thanks to
documentos
the
son
support of the
editados por la
community.
empresa, son fotos,
Documents
videos,
are edited by the
libros,
company,
revistas.
books, books, videos, and pictures and magazines. And the Dalmin Foundation works to preserve and keep the archive. Together with the archives of Comodoro Rivadavia, San Nicolas, and KANBAN, where the company is located, they created virtual photothek as open spaces of collective creation that aim at sharing the visual memories of these cities with the support and the contribution of all the neighbors. This is the historical archive called Bunge and Born 2022 that collects information of 100 companies in Argentina that made up this group between 1882 and 1994. Rafa, Centenera, Fábrica de Bolsas were part of some of the companies with many kind of items, grains, painting, forestry, so this collection includes accounting books, P&L accounts, pictures, registry of ships, flow of raw material, and publicity. The repository has 13,394 books in a physical space that includes the headquarters and the room 13. And the Bunge and Born Foundation manages and preserves this documented heritage to really value it. So this put into value process was developed during the pandemic over 3 years with 29 people, historians, archivists, technical experts, graphic designers, headed by Professor Mariela Sepp. The task developed to catalog, preserve, and digitalize the entire amount of documentation in digital format. It represents 1,500,000 images. For its management, they used Atom software, open access, and they used AI for the recognition of text. At the same time, using these installed resources, they work in collaboration with other archives for the digitalization of documents that other institutions can access. The network of corporate archives was created thanks to the collaboration of Bunge and Born and Williams Foundation that launched a program in 2020 to improve the use of archives as a whole, historical archives. So this archives initiative aims at improving preservation, public access, and the use of the cultural heritage of Argentina. Among actions, they provide aid for training of archivists, save repositories that are in danger, access and digitalization in partnership with SEGIPE in the city of Rosario. They started a contest to release our archives so that people working with historical archive can write and put all the collections at the availability of the public. So, 2 initiatives for the diagnosis and for the diagnosis and description of
One is shorter, the description is 1 year. The project of archives was presented in 2021 during the pandemic. The starting point was an interest on company archives. Issues faced are not new. In this case, the creation of the network was going to be built on collaborative resources. Accessibility and use of our archives. This was understood as collective need for rebuilding history, not just economic history and urban history, but also the territories and its workers. In order to launch the network, surveys to identify connections. And with that, we uploaded the archive data of the ASM software. Individuals companies and universities joined this network via a letter of intention, and after that, papers uploaded. The archive network, as part of our proposal, created virtual capacities in archive preservation, access to atom software and digital preservation. They also developed virtual talks, online talks, to present the archives, making up this network, and two on-site meetings to share experiences and expectations. In 2024, an international conference was held to know about the situation of Argentine heritage, and now we're working in a publication on the projects presented at this international meeting. In 2022, also from these two foundations, they launched specific processes for company archives. There's 4 editions with transnational winners, 10 for diagnosis, 17 for description of organization. As you can see, the topics are wide, such as wine, energy, press, photography, concrete, meat, transport, sugar, and others. So far, the places involved include 9 provinces such as Buenos Aires, Córdoba, Mendoza, Santa Fe, Entre Ríos, Tucumán, Jujuy, y Latam. Regarding custodial institutions, they're different. There are archives, public institutions, universities, public private libraries, archives, municipal archives. This is the access to Atom, which is the organized database. This is an open source free access software, a tool to manage the description of content and images. This base contains 52 collections loaded by the network team with the content provided by its member. This is an open base, and every year those who win the competitions join. It is really easy to access using the link here. There's a first layer, which is all the repositories with names and pictures. The second layer, that's the collections. There's an archive description with name, base date, support type, access conditions, and the last layer, the description of each institution. I'd like to finish my talk by mentioning the case of espadrille. This is a Basque origin shoe developed by a Scottish family. The owner of the company didn't know about his history. He learned about it through a repository in Scotland. It wasn't just the history of a large company and its family. It's the history of many immigrants that fell part of a large family. The history of espadrille makers and Argentinian history. I took these words from the presentation of his book because it matches our context. Our companies and our workers. It's our best argument to take care of our archives and to activate it, to use them, to generate new content, to let people know about our histories. There are many histories of workers. I hope that you like this short overview. Thank you very much, and let's take care of our archives.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Adriana. Now we're going to give the floor to Alberto.
Alberto.
Next talk by Alberto Casillas. He'll be speaking about Fundidora's historic archive and its role regarding company's industrial heritage. He has a degree in history by Nueva León University. He's a researcher in the dissemination of industrial heritage in the province of Nuevo León, in particular regarding worker memory of Fundidora Company. Since 2000, he's the director of Fundidora's Historic Archive, and he's studying a master's degree in humanities with an emphasis in cultural heritage by Autonomous University of Zacatecas. His work has been rewarded with different awards, the Excellence Award and a Medal of Historic Merit. He's an active member of national and international organizations devoted to preserving heritage.
Para no...
Bueno.
Alberto.
Alberto, please go ahead. You share your PowerPoint. Can you share it yourself? If it's not automatic.
Okay. No, no es automático. Yo te diría la siguiente, por favor.
Vale, de acuerdo. ¿Cómo comparto?
Gracias. ¿Yo puedo? ¿Pantalla completa? ¿Listo?
Listo, ya puedes.
Muy bien.
There you go. Good evening. My name is Alberto Casillas. I would like to thank you for having me in this conference. We're honored to be able to share our experience and make our contributions to the reflection of the value of memory, history, and document heritage. We're going to speak about Fundidora Historic Archive. We're going to speak about how it has been created through time, its key and its role as in the diffusion of historic memory of Monterrey, and the achievements in the 34 years of life and the challenges it has faced in its evolution and in its mission to preserve and value this legacy. Let's hope that this presentation is interesting for you and that it will enrich the dialogue regarding the preservation of historic memory and document heritage.
La siguiente imagen, por favor.
Disculpa que parece que se ha congelado la imagen que se estaba compartiendo.
I think the image is frozen.
Ahí está. Bien. ¿Puedes ponerle, por favor, un poquito más para arriba? Más para arriba. Súbele para arriba, por favor. ¿Puedes subirla para arriba? Es que va muy adelantado. Ahí mero, ahí está bien, ahí está bien. Bien, en esta ocasión hablaremos sobre el archivo histórico de...
In this case, we're going to speak about the Fundidora's historic archive. It's a document archive linked to the fifth smelting company in Monterrey after it was closed in May 1986. The General Archive of the State and the nation led the rescue of documents generated by the company until 1986 at risk of destruction or scattering. It was a state industry, it belongs to the Federation, and therefore the archive could be migrated to the capital of the country. But the general state of the state of Nuevo León thought that it was important that this archive stayed in the city of Monterrey. Next image, please. How was this archive created? The key institutions that managed to create this documentation was the School of Philosophy and Letters of the University of Nuevo León. It promoted this project with history students to classify the material. The archive was created in 1991 and the project lasted until 1995. Manobras supervised the liquidation of company workers and it supported the document concentration at the basement of one of the buildings at the headquarters. Here we see that in 1991, the nation's archive gave this repository to Fundidora to organize, describe, preserve, and disseminate the archive with limitations in terms of infrastructure. On a temporary basis, this was located at the basement, as you can see in this building in the upper part. The surface is 638 square meters, and there are 1,734 linear kilometers of documents. So as you can imagine, there was not enough room, and we had to put boxes on top of other boxes to accommodate everything there. In our next image, we're going to see what can be checked in the archive. There are different documents and materials for historic, social, industrial, and art research purposes. Industrial documents such as minutes, accounting, records, technical reports, reports related to technology, human resources, and others. We have audiovisual materials such as photographies, films, blueprints, drawings, installation facilities, and also pictures of workers. And we are going to see the general classification. This is how the collection is distributed into different areas such as companies, industrial, and production. Production is the most important one because this is documents related to the technological development of each production department the company had and the issues faced throughout the 86 years of existence. In our next image, we're going to see the photography collection. In 2010, an agreement was signed for the collaboration between Fundidora and the Photography Library in Nuevo León to restore and classify the photography archive. Here you can see some photographies from photographers such as Guillermo Kahlo, the father of Frida Kahlo, and others. Well, these photographies were digitalized and preserved digitally. Fundidora's archive received the custody of the repository or heritage. It doesn't have the infrastructure to maintain these photographies, so they signed an agreement with Fototeca so that they dealt with these 43,000 photographies in the collection. In our next image, you're going to see the general classification, which is very similar to the document collection. It's divided into management, public relations, labor relations, and then provisions and services, which has to do with community footprint. In our next image, we have another classification, which is production. These are photographies related to different departments, such as high furnaces, steel-derived companies, and others. This is how we've tried to preserve photographies. When I came here, well, there's no staff here. It's basically me. When I was hired, there was a round table with photographies piled up. How could I classify this? It was thanks to some workers in Fundidora. They worked from until the company closed, and this person died in 2006. I learned a lot from this worker, and I classified all these collection according to the general org chart of the company. In our next image, we're going to see when the digitalization work was completed of the 43,000 images of Fundidora collection. This was January 2019. Thanks to the support of Ternium, a steel company. Without their support, we would have never been able to complete this. Now this can be checked online. It's online in the portal called fototeca.l.org. The collection can be checked thanks to the support of Ternium. In our next image, we have the support received by Fundidora's Historic Archive in 2013 once the general classification was redefined. The General Archive of the State of Nueva León reorganized the oldest maps and blueprints of the archive, 3,500 maps out of the 47,000 that we have, and also some newspapers and documents. So this work is the work carried out regarding digitalization of photographies and maps. This was because of the synergy the archive has had with government institutions and private institutions. Fundidora didn't provide much support there. Now we're going to see the expert works and also changing the material of boxes. They used to be cardboard in the past. So from 1991 until 2020, the administrations of Fundidora were barely interested in the archive. They bought some boxes made of polypropylene, and we transferred from cardboard to this new material. In our next image, we're going to see the current situation of the historic archive. This was until the beginning of this year. The historic archive was in a critical situation since 2006 because this lack of space in the building where it was. The archive was transferred to this building within Fundidora facilities. So there was not enough room for the boxes, and they were piling up. This belongs to Sidermes, the Mexican steel company from 77 to 86. This was until 2022. In 2025, they're going to start to transfer the archive to the old headquarters. And now you're going to see how current administration bought almost 6,000 polypropylene boxes, and they've arranged this space so that it can be used. They've bought infrastructure. A budget of 1.5 million pesos has been activated to build shelves, boxes, dehumidifiers, lighting, furniture, fuses, And that's how we kept this archive in a proper condition. In this image, we see the key to understand Mexico's industrial history. Fundidora's archive preserves the memory and its impact in urban development in Monterrey. There's research on technology, labor relations, industrial safety, and architecture. It links past and present. Part of Fundidora's facilities have been changed into a museum, and this conveys the local identity where former workers and their families find in this archive a link to their personal history and their labor history. We've created a memory bank for workers. We've interviewed them because they're dying. But thanks to these interviews, the memory is recorded for searches by researchers. In our next image, you're going to see a project that we have. Most buildings have been changed into culture centers, and we can discover the activities that took place in them in the past. The main aim is to preserve the building and then to provide historic information to visitors so that they can know what used to be there in that building. We analyze our heritage, we analyze the different items, and we create industrial sites. And then buildings can be changed and devoted to other uses. In our next image, well, this is an image from the smelting hall. We preserve the meaning of architecture, but it's not easy because companies disappear and factories become a complex of machines that leave weird shapes in the landscape. This becomes difficult to understand with the passing of time. So the role here is to understand what happened back then and the use of different materials and machines. And thanks to document classification and photography classification in the archive, started in 2004, we created a catalog of these machines and pieces, and that's why we have information on each piece. Next image, you're going to see that we have 128 remains of industrial heritage, different machines, tools, buildings distributed across the area. We have a project to establish signs with information they're made of materials that really resist the weather and constantly used by visitors and mass events. Some signs have fallen down, and also they suffer from exposure to sunlight. And now you can see the role of the archive. It's not just classifying and cataloging and knowing the name of the different pieces. We've been to universities, public and private institutions, radio and TV stations, conferences, to share archive work and reinterpretation of history through photography. This is the work carried out by the archive. Also guided walks in the facilities for student groups, media, and government officers. This has created a positive impact since it has generated a cultural impact of appropriation of this place by visitors.
So the historical archive as a generator of work and dissemination of knowledge has been very important. In this image, and as practically the last one, you can see the areas in which the historical archive is divided. Archives activities, classification and research. One of the projects we have in the archive currently is to talk about the visibilization of worker women at Fundidora, because most of the iconography is androcentric, based on male, so we need to make the work of women visible because they were practically eradicated from the literature. So we also have customs care and also communication through exhibitions, conferences, and presentations and on radio and television. So this was a presentation of all the work that has been done in Fundadora and the archive for the industrial and recovery of Mexico to make sure we preserve all the documents. So this has been the job done over the last 25 years. And I joined in 1999, and since 1999 to 2025, 25 years have been devoted to transform and preserve the role of the historical archive, thanks to the exchanges with the Library of Nuevo León, with the private companies and governmental institutions. Thank you very much.
Bueno, Alberto, Adrián.
Okay, Alberto and Adriana, I would like to thank you for your participation and especially for the job you do to protect and disseminate mainly the legacy of the industry both in Argentina and Mexico. Apologies for all the technical issues we had. The time foreseen has been so much gone over that we don't have time for questions. No, thank you all very much. No, thank you very much to all of you. So with this presentation, we conclude today's session of the KANBAN Congress. See you tomorrow at 9:30, and thank you very much. And again, apology for all the technical issues we've had. Thank you.